There was a question that we got after our webinar today that I thought would be a good candidate for a quick demo video. So the question is that there are times when I want the size of two side-by-side plots to be exactly the same, excluding the axis labels, which may be different and include superscripts and subscripts. Is there a way to set the body of a plot to a specific size, excluding the label size? And I went ahead and created an example to help to illustrate how we would do something like this within DataGraph, where I have two different graphs to start with this. And I have one graph that has a different size spacing below than the graph that you see here. So as a result, the axis size itself, or the plotting area of my XY coordinate system, is different between these two graphs. So first of all, there's a couple of different techniques I'm going to show you, but the first thing I'll show you is what can I do if all I care about is these margins to be the same, and I have a 2-line here and a 1-line here. How can I make these exactly the same? So the way that I would have to do that is by going into the canvas settings and specifying what I want that bottom margin to be. So I can go into the canvas settings here, open that up, and you'll see that there is a margin below. I can set that either in units of measure or I can set it in pixels. So for example, here, maybe I'll say 80 pixels. Maybe that's a little more than I need. So I could maybe just go ahead and make that 70. Once I have set that in one location, I don't have to do the same thing again. I can just select now my canvas settings. I can then do a copy, click the thumbnail of my other graph and do a paste. And now if I go into the canvas settings here, oh, you know what? I pasted the wrong thing. Let me undo that, because what I copy and pasted was the axis settings. So Command Z, useful for undoing. So let me go back in here, select my canvas settings, do a copy, go to my other thumbnail, do a paste. There we go. Now, if you wanted to double check this, you can go into the canvas settings. You can see the margin here is also set to 70. So that doesn't actually control the size of the entire canvas, but it does now give us two graphs that have the same canvas size. So how could I control what the actual size of this is? Well, let's say, for example, that I want my inner box to be 3 inches by 3 inches. So if I go ahead and set my size to specified, and I said 3 inches by 3 inches, that's going to be the entire image. Let me actually go ahead and swap the view here so that we can really focus in on what we're working with. So what I want to do here is I want to, again, use the margins, but now I'm going to use them in a slightly different way. I'm going to actually add the padding on either side of my graph in order to accommodate and create an exact graph that's 3 by 3. So what I'm going to do is actually just add in an inch to this on either side. So this is 4 inches by 4 inches. And then here I can set, for example, my above and to the right to 0.25 inches. Copy that, make that also 0.25. And then if I just made this 0.75 inches, copy that, paste that. So now I have a graph that has a square that is 3 inches by 3 inches. And what you'll notice here is how the space, what we call the space for Y, it defines this distance from the edge of the axis to the label. That now is too big given the sizing that I've done. So I can go ahead and go into my axis settings and change that to narrow. And now this all works just fine. So how do I now transfer these settings over to here? Well, I don't have to recreate what I've done. I can, again, click on my canvas settings, do a copy, and go to this other thumbnail and then do a paste. Now all the same settings are there. A shortcut to change this Y spacing is that I don't have to always go into the axis settings. You can actually control click or double click, or sorry, right click onto the axis itself. You'll see the Y space, and I'll set this to narrow. So now my two graphs are exactly the same, and both have this 3" by 3" border. So the other thing that I want to show you is, well, first of all, if you wanted to place this side by side, we could compose these two graphs together. Maybe I'll just go ahead and show you that first. So if I do File, New Graph for Composition, that creates now this, completely blank canvas that I can bring my other images into. Quick way is to click the thumbnail and then drag it and drop it. And then you see there's that image here. I can click this thumbnail and drag it and drop it. And then, actually I replaced. Let me go ahead and do that one more time. There we go. Now I have both of them here, and you can see them side by side. Oh, actually, those are the same ones. Not a problem, because if you open these are basically what are called graphic commands. Either one of these, you can select which image is being shown, and I can then resize now this composite image to something that is 4 inches high, but I would want to be 8 inches wide. So now I have these two graphs side by side that both have a 3" by 3" size to them. There's another technique that I want to show you that I have also found to be pretty useful for things like this. And that is to go ahead, let's add a completely new graph, and let me plot this data. So here's our plot. We'll go ahead and add points just like the other one that we did. Now this time, what I want you to do is set the size to what you want the inner graphic to be, but we'll go ahead and change now all the margins to 0. What this does is creates an image that has the inner graph the size we want, and this image itself, you can see that the axis labels and the tick marks are outside of the actual image. So if I exported this version, it wouldn't show those. But what I can do is, again, do a composite image. And, oh, actually, I don't want to. Let me just go ahead and do File, New Graph for Composition. Here we go. And then if I drag this thumbnail down as a graphic into this image, you can see that the X and Y coordinate system is shown there. So you'll see those coordinates. Now I can go back over here. I can change the box style to, let's see, a single box. Now you have the entire box around if that's what you like. I kind of tend to like that look. And I can also clone this graph that I created here, but let's go ahead and just change the data to this other X and Y. And then my graphic image here, I could do an option drag to make a copy. And again, go ahead and, let's see, add in, here it is, my other data. So now I could, move these around to different locations and composite this into a single image. And then I could do multiple graphs like this, where again, I know each individual graph has the size of the inner region that I want, but overall, I can set, the overall size of the graph to whatever I would like it to be. And again, if 8 inches by 4 inches, for example, and then I can also set these offsets. Here I would actually want to do maybe some kind of consistent offset. This could be, again, 10 in one direction and then off in the other direction. Okay, so I hope that helps to give you a sense of how you can deal with this in terms of having individual graphs that have an inner region that's, again, set to a certain size, either by having the entire graph or by just setting an individual graph and then compositing them. I guess the last thing in completeness that would be useful to show you would be, what if you have a split graph and you have two of them side by side? So let me go ahead and do one more graph. And again, in this case, I'll do my plot of each of these. We'll add our points. And now I'm going to split the x-axis so I can put one on each side. Again, I like to change the box style to, well, actually we'll do this as an axis box so you see both of them. And now if I want to size this, again, I can say this is 4 inches in this direction. We'll go ahead and open the to set our margins above and below to add 0.25 above, 0.75 above and below. There we go. So now I have 3 inches in my my y direction. Now for the x direction, if I want to give myself 1 inch to play with, so again I want 3 inches for each of my graphs. So I'll add an extra inch of padding, and now I have to spread that out in 3 places. Here, my in-between, and my right side. So I can have my margin on the right be the same as the margin above, that's 0.25 inches. But instead of 0.75 here, actually I guess I could just do the same thing, but then let's add in a little bit of extra padding here, 9.25, and to set this space, this one right here, we would do that within this object that got added when we split the axis. So if I open this up and I go ahead and let's see, I want to set the space on left to an exact value. By default, it's, you know, something here we can set with the slider, but again, I could set this to exactly 0.25 inches. And now, let's see, I have 0.25 inches left below. I think my math is is a little bit off because I have 6. Oh, this should be 7. There we go. Sorry, I was adding in a couple of extra inches there. So I have 3 inches for each. Oops, there's my. Here we go. My arrow. 3 inches here, 3 inches here, and then I have 1 inch that's distributed between each of these boxes in between. So let me undo what I did there. There we go. Okay, so I hope that this was helpful. You can see hopefully how there's various ways that you can combine using the margins, do a little bit of math, and you can go ahead and create the objects like you see here. And all of these entry boxes where I added the 0.25 inches, 0.75 inches, you can, again, use pixels, you can use centimeters, you can use millimeters. You can also set these to variables. So if you wanted to be able to have a slider where you more easily changed what the margins were, you can do that as well. But either way, you have complete control over the size of the graph, including the margins.